I said I wasn't going to do this video, but I lied. I said that, but I was lying. Hi, I'm Lars, and this is my land. In my land, 3 years ago, the Beatles took over my world and derailed my entire future. And this video is how that happened. And you're gonna listen, because it's my land. Welcome to Annoying Memos land. Beepity beep, beepity beep, beep. First off, please like, subscribe, comment if you're nasty, because it helps a lot, and somebody stole my video, like, down to the title, and you just don't understand when you're a tiny channel how much liking and subscribing and commenting if you're nasty really, it does help. It helps so much, so please do that. Basically, what I do here is I talk about the Beatles a lot because I'm an obsessive fan. And I also made a 7-hour video on the TV show Lost. And if I don't mention it in every video I do, I will accidentally run over a unicorn while on a road trip with my estranged father. And that it just turned weird. It turned weird. Get your gold passport at my Patreon, patreon.com/LarsLand, where we have all the music, all the interviews, so much insanity. I'm obnoxious there. It is for the hardcore Larsland visitors, people who just don't mind hearing about the Beatles a lot. It's not like it helps me or anything. I'm trying to get this out the same day. So the edits, like, this is not going to be fun edits. There's not going to be as much cool stuff. I've got a gnarly burn on my forehead, and this Band-Aid doesn't stay still. So that's what happened there. Also, this chair, I got a new chair because my old squeaky chair broke finally. If you're from the very beginning, you remember. I have the loudest chair in the universe. But this chair, because it's new, is also squeaky, and I can't find my WD-40. So I'm gonna get some later. Next video, it'll be gone. I'm sorry. Once again, like, subscribe, comment if you're nasty. Now let's get back to the Beatlemania thing.
December of '63, my sister had the radio on, and I heard She Loves You. It's like the light came on.
Essentially, the reason why I wasn't going to make this video is because Brian Wilson died this week, and I'm going to talk about it just in a little bit, just a little, but I felt like, crap, no one wants to hear me talk about my journey through Beatlemania. But then 2 of my subscribers commented, and I kind of felt that I disappointed them, and that disappointed me. Ladies, they're all boys. Come on, you two, knock it off. I'm closing the door. Dan Layton commented and said, maybe trite is what we need right now. And that was the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning. And it is the day that I need to put this video out. So quick turnaround. But Dan Layton and Alan Clayton, maybe the Aitons got together and decided to do this, kind of encouraged me to make this video. So I decided to make it anyway. This is a video of a Beatles fan talking about how they got into the Beatles. It's not like my typical videos. So I'm not going to be offended if you don't watch it. I get it. This is a kind of a celebratory, I've done this for 3 years video, you know, and I almost have 5K subs video. Woo, that's weird. Filmed this whole thing and forgot to mention that the reason why this is the 3-year anniversary was that June 14th, 2022 was my first video. It was called Speculating Wildly About the Beatles Breakup or something like that. I rewatched 3 of my earliest videos in preparation for this. That whole watch through is on Patreon. I wasn't as bad as I thought I was gonna be. This is the 3-year anniversary video. Yay. I've told this story a lot of times, but this is how I got into the Beatles, and it's so ridiculous. I always knew of the Beatles. I guess my introduction to the Beatles were those compilation CD commercials growing up, where it's like, this band overtook the world with the British invasion. She loves you, yeah, yeah. And now you can get all of their music on 4 compact discs. I wanna hold your hand. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, like you've never heard them before. Penny Lane is in my ear. That's how I learned of them. And then also, first he took over the world with the Beatles. Eleanor Rigby. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. And then he swept the world by storm with his solo band, Wings.
and on the run.
Paul McCartney, like you've never heard him before. Get this in 4 easy payments of $12.50. Call now for an extra insert. So that was how I knew of the Beatles, because my parents were a little young for the Beatles. My dad was really into country because he grew up like in the country. And my mom, this is so funny, she actually saw Bob Dylan in the 70s because this guy who was like super down bad for her camped overnight to get tickets. And I just love that story. I'm like, you were so awesome, Mom. But she loved Heart and Kansas and Chicago and all of those kinds of bands. John Denver. Oh my God, I'm missing one of the big ones. She also had the Rolling Stones record with the zipper. She still has it. It's really cool. Loves Bing Crosby. And the music that I grew up listening to before we got into hardcore Christianity, Gloria Estefan, Celine Dion, Selena, Janet, Cher. We listened to the Queens. We listened to the girls and a lot of radio stuff. Then we got into a lot of Christian stuff, and it was less kosher to listen to non-Christian music. But one of my best friends growing up was super into Guns N' Roses, Sabbath, Ozzy, all of those bands. So I got a taste, and I was lucky enough to be rebellious enough, and my mom was common sense enough to let me listen to Metallica and Led Zeppelin and Queen. And as I grew older, I really kind of got into music that I would describe as the Big Chill soundtrack. That was kind of the level of music that I was listening to 3 years ago. I was listening to a lot of the Four Tops, the Temptations, the Ronettes. We're talking Little Richard, Sam Cooke. You're seeing the pattern here, lots of Motown. But occasionally, every once in a while, probably once a year, I would just go look at a couple of Beatles performances, just because there was something about the impact that they had on culture that was really interesting to me. So the ones that I always looked up were the Sullivan Show performances, Hey Jude, and the Rooftop performance, Don't Let Me Down. I would watch them every once in a while, and then I would move on. But this time, on April 14th, 2022, I clicked the next song. And then I clicked the next song, and that song was Hello Goodbye. In that music video, I noticed how unhappy George Harrison was, but more importantly, I noticed that Paul McCartney was left-handed. And my partner is left-handed, and my partner knows so much about music. And I texted him and I said, Paul McCartney is left-handed? And he goes, LOL, yep, or something like that. And I go, huh. And that's where it started. 2 days later, I send a text, so I think I'm a Beatles fan. And they go, LOL, it happens. Because the association I had with the Beatles at that time was just that Beatles fans maybe were pretentious or something. I'm not really sure what my thought was, but it's sort of true in the way that I thought Beatles fans were just like, it's the end all be all, everything Beatles, 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 Beatles. And guess what? It is. Here we are. But it was weird. It was weird because I like a lot of folk music. My real favorite band at the time, kind of before this, I don't listen to too much because it reminds me of a really sad time in my life. And I don't think I'm going to mention the name because it's so local that it might dox me. The genre would kind of fit into folk, psychobilly, horrorcore. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also went through like a hardcore grunge phase because my first boyfriend was really into grunge. So Smashing Pumpkins, Everclear, these are like my top 10 bands growing up for sure. I also listened to a lot of rap. I don't know, I have a pretty eclectic taste, which I think kind of serves being a big Beatles fan.
How about go on? Defy convention.
There were things that I understood about the Beatles, but not very much. I had some assumptions. Some of them were correct and some of them were way off base. My assumption was that Ringo Starr got a lot of hate, that he was considered, not that I believed this, that he was considered a crappy drummer and that he got a lot of, oh, it's just Ringo. And I think growing up in the 90s, that mindset was probably pretty prevalent after the VH1 storyteller situation, Thomas the Tank Engine. Thomas the Train, I was a little young for that, but just kind of like he's washed up. Hey. Okay, yeah, let him in. Come on, buddy. Okay, thank you, baby. Let's see, other things. That John and Paul like really hated each other, that the breakup was extremely bad. I didn't know what the breakup was, but I thought that the breakup was extremely, extremely bad. And knowing other band breakups, it's not that bad. It's just more that it was really sad because of who the Beatles were. But what I understood really in my mind was, man, I didn't know about the Beatles growing up. I couldn't tell you more than a dozen of their songs tops, but I knew the Beatlemania. I knew how much they took over the culture. I just knew that they were extremely influential and that they were in the public zeitgeist 60 years later to such a degree that all four Beatles deserved so much respect. I also, of course, knew how John Lennon died. I maintain this. One of my friends and I were just talking about this. The way that John died is probably the least interesting thing about him. The fact that it becomes such a talking point around him is heartbreaking because it's just a horrible thing, the jerk of all jerks, and he really shouldn't be defined by it. But I found that in the regular kind of Beatles zeitgeist, that's how he was defined by it. And I also kind of thought that the Beatles, or one particular Beatle, was extremely defined by a relationship that he had. Other things, I think I learned more about John Lennon on accident than I learned about all the other Beatles on purpose. I almost knew nothing about Paul McCartney. In comparison, almost nothing. I knew about Wings because of the CDs, but I knew almost nothing about him. I don't know if when I started getting into the Beatles that I knew George Harrison's last name. I don't know what I thought his name was. I'm just not sure. And I knew about India, that they got into acid, that they kind of had a weird heel turn halfway through. But what I thought, this is the hugest off base thing that I thought that they were kind of like One Direction, that they were picked to put together, that they were talent scouted, and that's how they got so big. Before I got into Beatlemania, I watched Simon Whistler's video on John Lennon, and I found out that they had known each other since they were in their young to mid-teens, and I was completely blown away, and I was so happy. I don't know why. I thought, oh, that's really neat. And wow, that explains how explosive their breakup must have been, because if you know each other that long, it makes sense that love and hate are really on the same page, because you don't hate someone if you don't love someone. That makes sense to me. I knew who was dead in the Beatles, but that's kind of where it stopped. I also thought that Paul McCartney was considered annoying. There was very much the consideration of they did well in the Beatles and then they just kind of kept hanging on. That's kind of how I felt or thought. So these were the assumptions I went going into my Beatlemania. Over the last 3 years, it went from that to making an 11.5-hour video on the White Album. The YouTube version is 9 hours. The Patreon version is 11.5. All right. So later in the video, I went on a pretty intense ramble about domestic violence with John and Ringo. And then I said a few other things. This might be the most direct and blunt I've been about the situation. I kind of said some of this stuff during the White Album video, but this is a risk. But I'm leaving it in because, I mean, whatever, dude. I'm too small. Like, my channel's too small for it to be like a huge risk.
This is kind of heavy, but I just want to get it out of the way. I know that they have had some questionable life decisions. This is not the venue for that conversation. There's a massive
Why did I do this?
difference between making a joke about illegitimate children to talking about the consequences and devastation of alcohol and substance abuse. I don't want people to think that I'm just blindly worshiping the Beatles, unaware of things that they have done in their past. I'm not some moral authority on people. I am just a fan.
I get it. Okay, I get it now.
And a person talking about things in Lars land.
Also, I guess I forgot to mention this. I did already know about John Lennon and domestic violence. I saw the interview where he spoke about it and where he denounced his actions, and I thought that was very brave. And I still think that. Same with Ringo. I knew that he had been violent with Barbara. If you say that he's been violent with Mo Starkey, he wasn't. There's no reason to think that he was. His kids have said that during the divorce, they didn't even see their parents fight. Not that any sort of physical violence is good. It's not. Barbara and Ringo had a pretty intense physical relationship before they both got sober. They had public slap fights. It was something that people knew about them. They were just really aggressive with each other. It was hard to read about. And I grew up in a situation that was, I don't know how to describe this. It wasn't physically violent in that way necessarily, but it wasn't so out of the realm. So I understood how these things happen. I am a recovering alcoholic. People will say, when you drink, you're telling the truth. I don't think that that's always true. I think that if you're a person who's an alcoholic, like really in the middle of it, I remember, or barely remember, I've been told I was a blackout drunk. I just said the most horrible things. And I think what I was doing was thinking, this person is hurting me. I'm going to say the most hurtful stuff I can say. And boy, oh boy, the regret that I still feel 15 years on after making amends, after trying to clear the air, after trying to become a better person, it still hangs over my head because of the way that I acted and the way that I treated people. It wasn't who I am today. And it doesn't change that I did it. It wasn't my heart then either, but it doesn't change that I did it. And I thought Ringo speaking out about it, denouncing it, being candid, and getting sober was really noteworthy. And I thought the same thing about John. I still stand where I've stood the whole time, that the apologies that they've made were not for us, but the victims of the violence. And those apologies have been accepted, so it's not our forgiveness to give. That's still how I feel. Let me just say something, and this is going to get me in trouble or whatever. It wasn't one time with John. It wasn't one time that he did to Cynthia and it was over and blah, blah, blah. If you read May's book, if you read other books about people who were around John and Yoko, if you read some books about the Beatles, he would pinch Cynthia or he would twist her arm behind her back. This is violence. He was also verbally pretty vicious at times. And in May's book, things where he would grab her hair and yell at her. And also in Cynthia's book, she talks about how Mimi was physically aggressive and violent with John. So these are examples that these kids are growing up with. These are learned behaviors, not excusing them, but learned behaviors that both people were working to unlearn. I, as a person who was, during my substance abuse, violent and very aggressive, I hope that people are able to grow past their worst moments. Because if we're not, then I am screwed. I am screwed. So those were things that I did know early on. I knew about Paul possibly having illegitimate children. I didn't really care. I was like, well, that's not surprising. It's possible that all four of them do. They were all doing it everywhere. So it's not, it was not... It didn't bother me, really. The craziest thing to me that I found out early was about ROAG. I don't know the pronunciation on this, so it could be ROAG, Raj, or Rogue. But I'm pretty sure it's ROAG. We're doing our best here. Best, which is the child that Neil Aspinall had with Mona Best. I thought, oh, Jesus, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? Still don't really know how I feel about it. Other things, John Lennon and Brian Epstein's trip to Spain. I choose to believe Pete Shotton's account of it in his book with Nicholas Schaffner. I talked about it in the Midas Man video if you want to watch that. Sexuality doesn't freak me out, doesn't bother me, never has. Sexuality is a very fluid thing. People should be allowed to experiment. We're talking about the 60s, the 70s. All four of them were having lots of sex. Satyricon, I don't care. I don't know why it would be so bothersome. It shouldn't. It shouldn't really be. I hope that you wouldn't want someone policing your time in the bedroom. I don't want anyone policing my time in the bedroom. So let's not police the Beatles' time in the bedroom.
And not that I wore them, but these are nylons, nylon stockings.
Why would you buy it?
Why? That's a good question.
The thing that really took me back, that I was never really a merchandise person, not an ephemera type person. Remember when I mentioned the Psychobilly band? They broke up when I got into them, and I was never going to see them in concert. So I was kind of always a little sad about that, but I listened to them every day, loved them so much. This is what we have. And then they played a show on New Year's Eve. And of course, Jack, come on, bud. Let's not do that. I have 3 cats. 2 of them are they just love to pick on each other. They're not like mean to each other, but it's definitely like they troll each other. So anyway, that band was the only one that I felt I needed to have stuff for. So I have the poster from that show. I have the tickets from that show. I have a shirt from them. I have a songbook. I can play the guitar, but I don't really. So I have no need for a songbook. I have a couple CDs, but not really because I don't listen through CDs. That was the only band that I felt like I wanted to have their stuff. I just wanted it. I wanted it. And then I got into the Beatles. The comparison is I spent 3 or so years listening to one band every single day, have one poster, tickets from a show, a t-shirt, and a songbook. And then after 2 months of listening to the Beatles, I made a video about them talking about how I had 4 books, 6 bookmarks, a t-shirt, and had watched a bunch of documentaries, and it was so fast. It was like, damn.
Chances are, if you're watching this, you probably know quite a bit about the Beatles. But do you have a Beatles shirt? Probably. Have you watched all of these documentaries? Maybe. Do you have 6 Beatles bookmarks? This one's holding my place. Do you have these Beatle books and then another one in the mail? Good God.
I felt the need to have it. I wanted more. I wanted more Beatles. And still now, it's not that impressive. The more impressive things are that I have a ton of books. So I have about 70 physical books total, including ebooks and stuff. I probably now have about 120. Cover to cover, I've read about 80. There's a few that I reread a lot or that I dig into all the time. And then a lot of them I'll just read once. Because I'm a journalist by profession, I read a lot for fun and for work. So reading is just kind of part of the things that I do. I keep books within arm's reach usually. I keep the anthology book. Here, I think I grabbed a couple that I wanted to show. Just a sec. We're gonna move some stuff around here. Keep away from Pumpkinhead, unless you're tired of living. His enemies are mostly dead, he's mean and unforgiving. One thing that's extremely different, by the way, is that now I wear about 80 pounds of makeup typically. I only wore a little bit today because of the gnarly burn, but then I wasn't even brushing my hair. Imagine that. Sheesh. Now, back to the point. There are books that I've read over and over again that are just like totally screwed. Like the I, Me, Mine book. We're screwed here. Here, There, and Everywhere by Jeff Emmerich. I read it so often. And since I bought it used, it already kind of needed some help. Now it's just torn to bits. On the other hand, I've got Kenneth Womack's 2 books on George Martin, and they were library copies since I buy a lot of my books used, so they're never going anywhere. I'm really proud of this one. I actually found this just in some random used bookstore. Can you believe I got Loving John by May Pang physical copy? I mean, I'd already read this book. I'd read it so early on, but having it in a physical copy, it was almost like you almost don't want to read it because it's so old. But anyway, this one was one that also needed a little bit of repair to the dust cover here. Usually I take off the dust covers, but this one just because I don't want to. From the library of Jean A. Maxwell. So thank you, Jean, or to whomever wound up selling that. My first Beatles books, this is so weird. Should I bring them over? Okay, I'll just put it on the screen. My very first Beatles book was John, Paul, George, and Ringo by Tim Hill, which was a photographer around the Beatles during the time. And it is essentially a Beatles chronicle. It's a day-by-day just check-in of what the Beatles were doing, where they were going day by day. I got that and I read it cover to cover the first day I had it. I just went and I read it. I paid attention to everything. That was in a couple of weeks of being into the Beatles. It was immediate. Then I got the Paul McCartney book by Philip Norman at the Goodwill. I wasn't looking for it. Then I got Tune In by Mark Lewison, the regular version, because I heard that I needed to. And then I got this, the Ringo with a Little Help by Michael Seth Starr, because something that I'd read and something that I noticed was that a lot of people didn't actually worry about putting Ringo in Beatles biographies. They would mention him a couple of times in the Philip Norman Paul book. I think he's mentioned 2 or 3 times. He's barely mentioned at all. I just thought I should probably try to look into the least talked about, least explored Beatle, and that was Ringo. So I got into him and I started reading as many books by him that I could find. And after that, I really couldn't tell you the order in which the books started compiling, but it was pretty quick. Other books that I keep nearby, right now I'm working on a Ringo video that will come out probably December this year. It's going to be a full Ringo video. Bill Harry Ringo Starr Encyclopedia and the Alan Clayson Ringo Starr Straight Man or Joker book. I keep the Paul McCartney lyrics book back there because I read it all the time. I have to use it all the time. This is so heavy. I need to get the paperback version, but this is so heavy. Oh my God. I hate using it. I prefer the digital version just because it is so heavy. I mean, frankly, as far as heavy books go, this one I use all the time, the Beatles Anthology. I got it for like $4. I own the Another Day in the Life Ringo Starr photo book, which is just amazing. There's so much stuff. He's put in like photo booth photos of him and Barb that are just so funny. And if I have time, I'll put some of these in, but I'm trying to get this out the same day. The book that actually took over my favorite book spot, which was The Stepford Wives and Go Tell It on the Mountain, was Up Periscope Yellow by Al Brodax. If you want to learn more about that book and all of its issues, but just learn more about it, you can watch my Yellow Submarine movie video. It's just beautifully written. Anthology on VHS, my partner found at a used bookstore. I got that pretty quick. A Hard Day's Night was on Max, so I watched that. The Scorsese George Harrison documentary was on Max, so I watched that. On Hulu, we had McCartney 321, 8 Days a Week, watched that. The first documentary that I watched, I just Googled, it was over that first weekend, was Get Back. And I watched it in a marathon. I have more on VHS that I didn't grab, that I forgot to, but we're a VHS family. I watched Nowhere Boy really early, and I thought that it was good. And now I'm one of those people who's very concerned about Aaron Taylor Johnson. Please, buddy, we're worried about you.
It's like Aaron Taylor Johnson and that old fucking freak. These days, the only thing I think of when I look at Sam Taylor Johnson is wah, 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 wah. Certified pedophile. Wah, 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 wah. Leave him alone.
The Beatles Anthology, which I watched very quickly, over the course of 2 days. It's easy to watch. The longest, most painstaking part of that process was rewinding the tapes. I own the Lost Weekend documentary, Backbeat, which I haven't seen yet because it's for a video, Nowhere Boy, The Beatles Unauthorized, just kind of a plain documentary, A Hard Day's Night, Best of the Beatles Celebration, The Beatles, The First U.S. Visit, Critical Watching, and The Beatles Diary. So those are the ones that I've already owned and seen except for Backbeat. But also early on, Tubi, which I'm sure that they still do, they had like 40-something Beatles documentaries. Have I watched all of them? No. Oh, what I did know about Paul McCartney, I'd seen the Paul is Dead documentary, or mockumentary, and I've done a video on it. It tanked my channel algorithm. I got shadowed for a while. That video, I had to beg people on Twitter when I still had a Twitter to watch it because it was just dead. But Tubi had 40 documentaries and some were super, super lame. Similar to videos that I have, people are talking about quotes and a compilation of interviews and stuff talking about certain topics. And some of them were just really incredible videos. Other things that I own include, this is so embarrassing because I do not own a turntable. This was my first record, the Beatles for Sale Japan pressing. It was just a situation where we could afford purchasing it, and I saw it at the mall one day, and I really wanted it. This is torn, so I need to fix it. Beatles for Sale is an album that means quite a lot to me, as everyone knows. I also own this 45, which is Twist and Shout and You Can't Do That, which is a song I really love. Sorry. Nope, not that. This is a moment for Shark Milk 44. Come on in, Shark Milk 44. And, of course, this is what I got for Christmas this year. I own the White Album. It's the 2018 pressing, so it's nothing special, but it has felt really special to me Once again, I don't own a turntable. I would love to at some point. I would love to get one for my 35th birthday, but that's just not in the cards right now. And I only own 3 shirts. This is one of them. My first Beatles shirt I got really early on was this one. This one I only wear like for comfy stuff because it's not for me, but the collar is weird and it feels kind of weird. So that's the neurodivergent in me. This one. I would love more Beatles stuff, but you know, money. I need a Beatles sugar daddy. My second favorite, I guess, piece of Beatles ephemera is this. It was purchased from our local library and friends sale. My partner found it and called me and I was overjoyed. So I do own this. This is a 1969 issue. I have read it, but I don't like to open it very much. And I'm gonna put it back in its little plastic cover now. It's not in the best of shape. I try to keep it safe. The most touching, meaningful to me Beatles piece or item that I have is this, it's so dumb, birthstone ring. It has the Beatles birthstones in age order, and I wear it on my right ring finger every day. It was a gift for myself for finishing the Lost video. I held on to a gift card for a really long time just to get it from Etsy, and it's still extremely meaningful to me, and I wear it all the time. It's kind of dirty and whatever, but it's not a regular piece of merch. Oh, I used it in the White Album video. I do have a rusting nesting ball, a Russian nesting doll of the Beatles and Sgt. Pepper. And I also have a Yellow Submarine Paul rubber ducky. So I have those things that are just like gifts that have been given to me. It's just still very weird to me how much the Beatles took over.
I wanted to learn more about these guys who were cool with making jokes about themselves. So then I started watching the interviews, and then I started watching the documentaries, and then I started reading the interviews, and then I started reading the books. And wow, I haven't really been interested in anything else since.
Same. I didn't expect, and it's still very weird, that the Beatles were able to derail the Lost Project. And I wound up working on the Lost Project for almost 3 years. It meant the world to me, and it still means the world to me. And I'm very grateful that it is my most viewed video, and I think it deserves that spot. I was watching Lost every single day. I was working on that video every single day. I was working for a publication full time. Now I'm a freelancer, so I'm just as busy, but in different ways. But I would get off work and I would work on the Lost Project. My master document, when I first started filming videos, is 188 pages, but now it's like 240 something. It took me a couple years to get back to the point where now I'm working on my second version of that video because I go back and make better versions of stuff. But it was crazy that something actually derailed me from Lost, where I thought I have to stop working on this Lost video and make my first video on this channel, which was planned to be a TV and movies channel. I had so many plans to do so many things for this channel. I had filmed so many things that just never saw the light of day for this channel, and the Beatles came up and ruined it all. Like, they changed everything for me. I dug deeper, still dig deeper than I ever expected to. I listen to them almost every single day. I've never gotten sick of them. I've never gotten sick of them. Some days I wake up and I'm thinking about the Beatles, and I will think about them outside of needs to do things for my pets and like cooking dinner and my physical therapy stuff. I will think about them the whole time, the whole day. I will be thinking about them. I'll be listening to them. I'll be reading about them. I'll be writing something about them. It's all I think about. It's all I think about. And the thing is that has been so noteworthy is that I'm so not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not the most obsessed. I'm not the most crazy. I've only been doing this for a few years, and I have a fan base, like a subscriber base of people that all have been into the Beatles longer than me. All of you know more than me. I have such big holes in my knowledge gap, and I'm aware of this because when I do projects, I get into the eras and I will learn everything about that project. I could talk to you about the Yellow Submarine project and album forever. I could talk to you about Magical Mystery Tour for a good amount of time. I could talk to you about the White Album for days, literally days. That video could have been like 16 hours, seriously. But there are huge holes about the London scene or places that they hung out. I'll know things, just surface level things that I've read in books, but I just didn't dig into the way that I do for certain things because of what I do. It's just wild. I watched 3 of my earliest videos and I watched them on 2 times speed because I had to make it possible to get through because I was like, I'm gonna die. This is gonna be so cringe. I did okay for 2 months in. I did all right. I was very surprised. I agreed with a lot of the stuff I said then. I still agree with now. I was a lot funnier, probably more palatable for the public at that point. And I said something early on where I said, I know more about the Beatles than most people.
But this year, I somehow, for the first time, noticed that Paul McCartney was left-handed. And then I just kept watching more and more videos. And then I got on the Spotify. And then I started watching interviews. I just spiraled from there. Now I can safely say that I know more about the Beatles than most people.
And a lot of Beatles fans took umbrage to that. That was fair. I meant like most people, the general world. 51% of people. I know more than 51% of people about the Beatles, which I did. And I was learning so fast. That was the thing that was crazy. It is all consuming. If you have time, and if there are moments when I'm not working on a journalism story, that is all I will do for that day. It is all I will do. I tried other bands. People would comment and ask me to review such and such and such and such, and I just couldn't. I also didn't want to because I was like, I don't want to spend any time away from the Beatles. I want to spend time with the Beatles. Still, there's more. There's more for me to enjoy. And as long as I feel like this, I'm gonna do this.
Since I started freaking out about the Beatles in the last couple months, people in my life have been telling me, hey, you should check out this band. Hey, you should check out that.
Pass? Like, no disrespect or anything, but pass?
Beatlemania just came to Larsland. Just let me enjoy things. This is Camelot. Are you really going to tell me to learn about Jimmy Carter when we are in Kennedy?
I've done 2 videos on the Beach Boys and I couldn't get into them. I love what I've heard. I've listened to a majority of their discography and I enjoyed it. So I'm a Beach Boys fan. I'm a fan of the Beach Boys, but not like a big enough fan to make videos. I'm not going to be able to live up to the caliber of what I want, and I don't have time to step away from the Beatles that long. I just can't do it. I tried to get into Dylan, couldn't. I just couldn't. The Kinks, the Monkees, couldn't. Just couldn't. Enjoyed what I heard, loved what I heard, but I was like, this is not the same for me, so I'm not going to do it. No matter how much I didn't get into the Beach Boys, it was the same thing that mattered to me as it did with the Beatles, that I knew how much Pet Sounds meant to Paul McCartney, and I knew how much Pet Sounds meant to my partner who doesn't listen to this type of music at all. But the world talks about Pet Sounds and how influential it was. I spent a couple of hours talking to a friend really early on who told me the entire heartbreaking, almost unbelievable because of how heartbreaking it is, story of Brian Wilson. And I just felt so protective of this man. This is so unacceptable and horrible, and oh my God, this seems unreal. It's so crazy. Wow. It's just wow. Brian Wilson died earlier this week. For whenever you're watching this, he died earlier this week. And I was getting ready to film this video. This is how I found out. I'm going to put the text on screen. I didn't understand. I was so blown away. And I knew that he had been struggling. Everybody knew that he had been struggling for a while with health issues and mental health issues. And it still just felt unreal. It still feels unreal. And that's why I didn't feel like I could make this video. It was crazy because I was like so ready. And this is all about me for a second. I'm sorry. I had the best hair I've ever had in my life. It looked amazing. I'm so sad. But then I couldn't film. And so I tried again to film like 10 hours later and I couldn't. This is what happened. If I can't pull it off, then I can't pull it off, but we're gonna fucking try. Ugh. This feels inappropriate. I'll
I'll come back tomorrow.
I had the best hair of my life, and then later on I had the medium hair of my life, which is how I got this burn. So all of that work just for a really bad burn that I know is going to scar. And it was just, I can't do this. So I thought, man, after this huge loss, I can't make this freaking video. I don't want to talk about me right now. And I hardly want to talk about me right now because the enormity of the loss, not just to music or to fans of the Beach Boys, but to the world. On a darker note, it's hard for us to process Beatle fans because he's the same age as our Beatles. I don't have to say it, but I am almost positive that Ringo Starr is immortal. I'm pretty sure that he made a decision that he's not going to die. And if he decided that, I don't think he's going to. Motherfucker out there doing jumping jacks. Crazy. One of the things that I said, I think in my first video or my second video, that I didn't like favorite Beatles. I disagree with that to a degree, but having a favorite Beatle to the point where it's like you're kind of like whatever on the other Beatles and you just are so obsessed with one of them. I still find kind of annoying because being a really extreme Beatles fan, I think in order to understand the Beatles better, you can't dismiss one of them. People have asked me who my favorite Beatle is. I don't necessarily have one. The joke really is that it's whoever I'm least angry at that day, but it is most of the time Ringo. And that is because he has cheated on his partners less than the others. He's been kind more than the others. like it's mostly that. I find Ringo to be so refreshing. I said early that he is sunshine, the human personification of sunshine. I haven't seen them in the same room. I'm still not sure that he isn't sunshine itself. Still true to this day.
Ringo is generally amazing, and I'm not positive that he's not just sunshine disguised as a human. Have you
Seconded.
seen them in the same room?
Have not. Just such a loving person toward the other Beatles and willing to understand the human condition. I've found that to be really, really lovely. Paul, I understand and empathize with a lot. I've been shut down for caring. I do understand Paul. I understand where he's coming from a lot. Like as a person with really severe ADHD, and one of my therapists says that they think I'm autistic, high functioning autistic. I was like, no way. At the time, but the more I've learned about it, the more I'm like, maybe. Maybe. George is the hardest for me to empathize with, understand. I have a really hard time with George. And so I try my hardest to empathize with him, to understand him, to learn about him, because I am very George averse at times. That is just being absolutely honest. Solo music wise, those early albums from George really hit me really well. John Lennon is hard off and on for me because he reminds me a lot of myself before I got sober. Aggressive, violent, yelling, intimidation, cutting words, codependency. These are things that I've really struggled with in my life. And so when I understand him, I have to look in a mirror for myself, and it's difficult. The way that he has been taken from the world so young, without the ability to really have a redemption arc, learn, change, and his legacy being cut in such a really horrible way is just so heartbreaking to me. And frankly, I've made a lot of John Lennon videos. They're private or deleted now. Because the comments on John videos were really disturbing. I also have a certain name censored in my comments. Try it. The comment will not go through. We don't need to give that guy any sort of publicity. We know why this guy did it, his motivations, and naming him is encouraging that. The early videos, like the first 15 videos, maybe more than that, his name was in the comments. People were saying really awful stuff. So I stopped doing specific John videos because I still think that that is the kindest way I can handle John's legacy, is by right now kind of protecting it as best I can. Back to Ringo, I have found him the most interesting, and it's a lot of work to find more about him. I have found the fact that very popular drummers that are very influential now cite Ringo as why they got into drumming or how influential he was. And I have always thought, well, the drummers say this, so why are the kind of armchair musicians talking shit about Ringo? I thought it was just so wow, shallow opinions on Ringo, I guess. It just always bothered me. So I wanted to learn more about the man rather than what I'd heard about him.
You like my hat? I don't look good in hats, but I'm here because I forgot to talk about something and I'm just trying to save you guys from the burn. Speaking of favorites, when we're talking about favorite Beatles, I felt extremely strong about it back then. Let's put that in right now.
Yes, fuck a favorite Beatle. You can't have a favorite Beatle. My favorite Beatle is the Beatles, okay? Jesus. I don't know why I'm so mad about that.
I don't know if I explained this well enough. I don't want to diminish anyone's fandom or anything because I think that that's kind of cheesy to police. I don't know. It's always kind of annoyed me. But I think that's probably just because I came in with certain conceptions. I think I have a pretty even amount of books about each person. Let's see. I might have the most about John for the same reason that I know most about John. Because of the way that he died, frankly, it made him the most accessible. I think I only have 2 Paul books that are physical Paul books. I don't know why I only have Many Years From Now, the lyrics, and Philip Norman's Paul McCartney book. I need to get the McCartney Legacy. I have the most George books, I think for the reason that I mentioned before, but I got a lot more George books for the George and Paul video. Anyway, so that's me trying to check my own favoritism because there are so few Ringo books that I've bought shitty ones before that I didn't mention here because why? The favorite thing used to really extend to not having a favorite album and not having a favorite song. We're going to need to put something in right now before we go there about favorite albums.
Musically, technically, what the best album is, you're not going to get that information from me. I will not be able to tell you because I don't know. You're also not going to find an album that I don't like, really, except maybe... I'm just being honest. It's not that I don't like it, it's just not as much.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit. What? Isn't that, oh my, I completely forgot that. And I think when I said that, I'd only listened to it all the way through once. Maybe twice, because at that point I was listening to Sgt. Pepper, Rubber Soul, and Revolver, and Beatles for Sale. That's all I was really listening to. What? But I understand where I was coming from, sort of, because I was just not cultured enough. For a really long time, I tried not to have a favorite album. I wanted to have an open mind for other albums, and I've learned that I can do that without diminishing how I feel about other albums. I can't hide the fact that the White Album is my favorite. When I started the White Album project, I didn't necessarily feel that way, but for a while, Beatles for Sale, I think, is my pet favorite that it will always be the thing that I'm you guys shit on this for no reason. I need to defend it, but it's not my favorite album. That being said, it's really hard to say, oh, I don't like this one because I like all of them. Favorite song though, I can't really do that. There's too many. Favorite song, How? Because my favorite jam for a long time right now has been Savoy Truffle. My favorite song that's emotional for me is Rocky Raccoon. My favorite song, I don't know, man, because depending on the day, I Want You, She's So Heavy, because I think that song is so amazing. And then some days it can be You're Gonna Lose That Girl, Not a Second Time, For No One. I love For No One. Right now I'm doing my song breakdowns on Patreon have been going through Revolver. So right now a lot of my favorite songs are Revolver songs. I'm Only Sleeping is, I think, one of my staple favorites, but I think my most repeated songs are earlier songs, but it's not because I like the earlier albums more. It's because I listen to the full albums all the time. So I don't know. I have a hard time picking a baby. This is not an issue with any other band, any other artist, anything. I don't know, man. I don't know. At the beginning, it was a moral thing because I was trying to keep myself from having too much bias. I was like, stay open because you have so much to learn. I think I knew that I was starting in this crazy thing. If you want to go back and watch those 3 videos that I watched, I'll link them in the thing. But I think I knew that this was like I was starting. So I was trying to be like open-minded, and good for me on that, but it's changed a little bit. So it was like more of a moral thing, and now it's more of a like, oh fuck, I can't pick that. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's it.
I can't listen to the Beatles in a casual way. It's like I can't think, I can't live if Beatles music comes on. It's too personal.
This is kind of just a real rant. I wanted to talk about being emotional in my videos. I'm known for crying. It's something I do. I made this really short video about Sinead O'Connor when she died. And I said in it that seeing her cry and encourage crying, I thought it was so... My voice is fucking up. Hang on. I don't have time to stop filming, so I found her crying so beautiful and so touching. Even Miley Cyrus crying in a couple of performances in Wrecking Ball, I found it so touching and so beautiful. And I cry. I don't cry when I'm working. I don't cry every single day. I did a podcast with Chris McGovern, the Gen X Muse. I'll link it in the description. It's so funny because it's funny to me how much I cry. Like, I'm not offended by it. It's funny. Like, we should be able to joke about it. Because I listen to the Beatles when I'm cleaning. I listen to the Beatles when I'm walking. They asked me, do you cry when you're cleaning? Do you... like how are we doing? And I laughed and I was like, not really, 8 days a week. As people know, if they've watched my Beatles for Sale videos, yes. And Rocky Raccoon, yes. It's not like impossible, but it is something that I do allow myself when I know that I'm going to talk about something emotional and that I think people feel emotions about, or people are angry, and anger is an umbrella emotion. Maybe we need to be able to feel empathy. I let myself feel very deeply. I feel the very highs. I feel the very lows. I find being open to emotion is probably the most important part of my channel. If I wasn't this passionate about the Beatles, I wouldn't be here. If I stop crying, I stop creating. In the Beatles 64 documentary, one of the guys says hearing the Beatles was like seeing color for the first time, and he teared up talking about it.
And I heard she loves you. It's like the light came on. It's like the light came on. It's like total darkness. And then the light comes on.
That's kind of the same thing that Ozzy Osbourne has said about the Beatles.
What's the line that you always say they did to your life?
So going to bed in a black and white world and waking up and it turned to colour. That's exactly what it felt like. And that wasn't my line. Somebody else did that.
They made life that was quite mundane into such
But you don't
fun.
forget, we come out of World War II and the fucking rationing. We had strict rules to live by, and it was that broke the fucking doors down for so many people and give freedom to the world. Our world, anyway.
It's not just me who feels this strongly about them. I'm just one of the people who is public about it. Very small, unimportant public about it. But I have a background in journalism, so my research, my work is informed by being a journalist. But before I was a journalist, I was a writer. And before I was a writer, I was a deep feeler and a deep thinker. Not that I'm smart, but I would analyze things and I would feel very deeply. And I was always told to get a grip, get over it, stop singing with such passion, stop looking like this and just stop, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And I made my own land. So I didn't have to stop, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet, because I wanted to be able to love it. And I will defend that for as long as I do this. And as long as I am here doing this, I will cry. I will laugh. It can be funny. I've gotten a couple of comments about it, where it's like, you need to mellow out. One time, the last video, the George and Paul video, someone was like, I'm not a troll, but you need therapy. And then they went on to like bring up my gender and say a couple of other things. It was a really long comment, so I hid their comments. And when you hide someone's comments, you can't block someone from your channel. When you hide their comments once, their comments are hidden for the future. And I hid that comment. I was like, I'm not doing this. Do I need therapy? Obviously. Do you want to pay for it? Even if I did therapy, it would be to address other things. It would certainly not be to address how deep I feel, because I think that that's like one of the best things about me. I think that's one of the best things about Beatlemania, the best things about Beatle fans, is that we're able to be vulnerable with our feelings because of what these four from Liverpool have brought out in human emotion. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that show the impact of music and the impact of trying to understand other humans? Isn't that great? There's a couple of comments that I got saying that my emotions cloud my work, my judgment, that I need to mellow out. It's too much. You care too much. I said once, maybe, but my feelings got you to engage. And they said, well, I engage because your work is great and your professionalism is great and blah, blah, blah. No, if my professionalism was great and my research was great, that's what your comment would have been. Your comment was that I need to mellow out. It's, to me, very sad for the people who are uncomfortable with me crying or uncomfortable with me being emotional and analyzing how I think that the Beatles were feeling at the time, or understanding their world through my world, being uncomfortable with someone getting angry, someone feeling things. It says a lot about that person being uncomfortable with emotion, and it says a lot less about me. It says that that person is shackled by societal expectations of a stiff upper lip, and then that is something that does not exist here. My stiff upper lip, my emotionless, most objective self is saved and held for my journalism work. It's not for here. This is not journalism. It is definitely informed by how journalists work, and I try to be as accurate as possible, but this is a fan. Like, I am not an expert. I'm just a fan that wants to talk about the Beatles, and I have to hold my most objective self, that covers murders and family annihilators and really horrible stuff, and having to stay as emotionally dead and robotic as possible to try to combat my own biases. And it's hard to do that. It is hard to do that for the integrity of my work. I don't have to do that here. I can talk about things and have an analysis and really enjoy something here. That's what I can do. So I do it because it is my land. The Beatles content that I consume is typically just on Instagram Reels, short, fun stuff. I don't watch other creators. I don't watch other creators on Lost or the Beatles. And it's on purpose because when I'm watching YouTube videos, I'm watching fun stuff that I enjoy. I don't want to sit there and compare my stuff with theirs. And I know that that upsets some people. I think that that's weird. Vinyl Fridays doesn't either. A lot of people don't. And it's just a matter of oversaturation, needing to have a break. I go directly to the source material. I work really hard to find what I can find. If I were spending a lot of time watching other people's videos, I think it would start to change the way I create. And I don't like that. I also don't want to sit there and compare my Lost video to other people and feel inferior about it. I want to be feeling happy and confident about my videos. So that's one of the reasons why I don't. And that's, I just wanted to defend myself a little bit. But people do get pretty riled up sometimes. And I get why. I don't find it offensive that people get so emotional. And that doesn't mean that I don't get feedback, because my friends in the Beatle world are more knowledgeable than me. And I get feedback, trust me. And every comment that I get about things that I got wrong is like fuel to the fire about needing to do better. I come back every time working harder, going deeper to prove them wrong. It's a reverse psychology situation. You want to shit on me? Okay, shit on me now, but you won't be able to next time. You're going to have to go for the low hanging fruit next time because I'm going to get it right next time. It's only grown that way. I know that I get some flack. I would say like my comment section can be like 20%-ish flack. And I get why people get angry, because why wouldn't you want to defend the thing that brought color to your life? That is how the Beatles have had a chokehold on my life for the last 3 years, and the rowers keep on rowing. They show no signs of slowing. As long as I'm here, I will be doing this. Please like, subscribe, comment if you're nasty. Consider supporting me on Patreon, patreon.com/dollarsland for a lot more of this. I love y'all so much. And y'all come back now, you hear? Bye.
My sweet Lord. My Lord. Lord.
But it takes so long, my
Lord.
my sweet
Lord.
I would like to thank my gold passport holders on Patreon. James D, Julian, Pete S, Pete L, Jody, Al, CB, Venus, Steve F, Caleb, Ann, Kyle, Shitpost Botman, Ashley, Taylor, Iridescent Gems, Russell, Matthew B, W, Tyler S, Angel, Front Penny, Debesh, Tim, VT, Felonious Punk, Dan, Peter R, Pam, Christopher R, Joe M, Swag Pac-Man 64, Rebecca Hubler, Molly, Lena, Zimmers 64, and Alec. Thank you so much for supporting me, getting your gold passport, and tolerating my insanity.